Yeah, it's your boy E3, son of the legendary godfather, gangster rap, Eric Easy, right? And yeah, you rockin' with NUGL TV. You know, we rich and ruthless, baby. Once again, NUGL TV, rich and ruthless, baby. We choose to keep it real. Really though.
NUGL TV, we're back again. E3, how you been, man?
I've been good.
How was your week?
It was most definitely fabulous.
Was it
You know
nuggled?
me.
Did you nuggle this weekend?
I nuggle every day.
I do too.
Why not?
Today is another day of Nuggle Times, Nuggle Media, Nuggle Information.
Wait a minute. Y'all know me, and y'all know how I do.
Yes.
We have some VIPs in the house,
VIPs.
you know.
I have
Very
a VIB.
important.
I have a VID in the house.
Actually, no. We're going to remix it VIG again, you know, like last week. We have very informative guests, and we're going to let them introduce themselves. Fellas,
Absolutely.
introduce
Take
yourself.
it over.
I'm Dana Beal,
That's right.
Dana Bill.
and I founded the marijuana movement.
You hear
Yes.
me?
Me and Ed Rosenthal.
Ed Rosenthal, my God. Let's give it up for Dan. Dana. Man.
I recruited Ed.
Ed.
I was marching down the street, and he says, "What's up?" And I says, "You should get in the street with us."
Yes.
He put Ed on.
Hey, check this out. We have another VIP guest tonight,
Most
Dr.
definitely.
Michael Mastron, PhD in the building. Give
Tell
him a
him.
hand, man.
Let's geek
He's our
out.
guy. He's going to be my Dr. Drew. We
got the big fellas in the house.
Exactly. You know, we wanted to bring Dana in today because I've been reading about Dana and I've been seeing his movement, his passion. I don't call it advocacy. I call it a passion for the rights of everybody to do what they do and do what they feel and do how they want to do it. So, Dana, give us a little background about yourself, man. Let the Nuggle people world out there know and you know how you push this line, man. Because
Well-
you know.
There's a period of time before normal.
Yes, before normal.
Before
Absolutely.
normal,
Yep.
where there was a marijuana movement.
Yes.
And the form it took was a bunch of people got together in the park and sparked up.
That was
And
it.
the idea was, you know, hundreds of people challenged the law. And the funny thing is, the cops will arrest you at 5 in the morning
Yes.
if you're alone.
Right.
But they get embarrassed when you have hundreds of people saying, you know, their political rights are being infringed, and they don't really want to haul hundreds of people off to jail because it becomes a mass arrest
Yes.
situation, which is big news.
Right.
So we started in 1967,
Wow.
and in 1970, there was a guy named Eddie Arrow who said, we're going to have a smoke-in in Washington, D.C. at Washington Monument, which is, of course, this like a big joint, right? And we showed up. What happened was Eddie got scared off
Okay.
because Nixon said, bringing in Honor America Day, and we're going to totally overwhelm the hippies and yippies and freaks
Right.
with all these straights who
Yeah.
were very pro
Wow.
Vietnam War.
Wow.
And, you know, everybody was against a war at that
Yeah,
point. I mean, it was
yes.
already after
Yes.
1968, so everybody was against a war. So we got them to do something on national television, the Committee to Prevent a Fist Fight, said all these people are coming from the pot side, and they're going to maybe there'd be some kind of like clash,
Yeah.
and we want to prevent a fist fight. So what happened was we showed up with pre-rolled joints, and it's like nobody around. And then we brought the joints out, and all of a sudden there was hundreds of people around. I don't know how that happened, but then somebody said they're arresting people down by the reflecting pool.
Oh.
So we went down to the reflecting pool, and you know, Nixon's Honor America Day was way at the end of the reflecting pool, just a few people on the Lincoln Memorial, right? And it was, you know, some Christians, and they were way overdressed. It was 100 degrees, and you know, they were in three-piece suits, and they were just sweating. You know. We, on the other hand, had taken our shirts off, and we only had like, you know, shorts on. So the cops are not going to let us get to them. And
Right.
what we did is we jumped into the reflecting pool and marched down the reflecting pool
Wow.
and got right up to these people chanting 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your fucking war.
Yes.
Wow.
And
With pre-rolls, the original pre-rolls.
and we dispersed them, and then basically they came and they tear gassed us 4 times and drove us out of the park. But we kept coming back because people were coming to watch the fireworks, and everybody watches the fireworks. That's apolitical.
Right.
So eventually there were just too many tourists, and they would have to gas their own people. So it kind of ended with we won. And this is important because it was right after Kent State.
Absolutely.
And everybody said,
Right.
you can't do anything anymore without getting shot. And we said, no. You can still do stuff. So it was actually the potheads who started the anti-war movement again after everybody was scared
Right.
shitless.
Right. That's amazing to know that you were part of the grassroots movement of where we at today. Because if it wasn't for that fight, I don't think we'd be here today with the masses.
Yeah, well, see, they didn't have Normal, and Normal only had his first first convention 2 years after that.
Wow.
So this was all done by yippies, which were there were a lot of yippies around that period of time. A yippie is a hippie who's been beaten up by the cops.
Yeah. So let's fast forward till today, and your passion and your movement today, and the knowledge you have gained to get us here where you're going. Give us a little update.
Well, the most important thing,
Yes.
the new meme.
The new meme.
The new meme is marijuana prohibition is false imprisonment. It's obvious to us, anybody that from the 65% of people that want to legalize pot, that this is wrong, and that if somebody is falsely imprisoned, they should immediately be let go.
Right now.
And they shouldn't reinstate it to put people in prison after you got rid of it, which is what some people are saying. So we want to do whatever is necessary to end people being locked up. And, we just had a big campaign to legalize pot in New Jersey and New York, and some anti-marijuana people stopped it at the last minute. But we found out the guy, actually, his name is Alexander Berenson, that he wrote 12 spy novels before he wrote his anti-marijuana book, Tell Your Children. So he's good at verisimilitude, making things sound like it's real, right? Because that's what you have to do in a spy novel, and scaring people.
Wow.
So he took that art that he learned writing spy novels and applied it to a book about marijuana, where they're trying to say marijuana is causing schizophrenia, and people become violent maniacs and kill people. And of course, this is what
planet is
Harry
that on?
Anslinger said back in 1936. Exactly.
Some things never change.
And it's true that there's some people who probably shouldn't smoke pot, but there's a genetic test for that. So you can test for people to find out if they're going to get that schizophrenic reaction.
Right, the
And
genetic
there's
basis
no
of
reason
schizophrenia.
to lock up 99 plus percent because of one little part of 1%. It just makes no sense.
Well, I don't think good science should be used in that fashion. You had a spy, like this whole, these are political movements. They aren't scientific movements. They're not medical movements. We'll go into that in a little bit.
Right.
But,
My thing is this.
I've been locked up for cannabis purposes.
You're a good candidate. You're a good.
Plenty of times,
person.
sad to say,
Get your own
waste
dispensary.
of time.
Yeah,
I should.
You want to get your own dispensary?
Most definitely.
Yeah,
I
but
want my own everything. To
They
be
have
honest.
new laws now. You
Well,
can
I think
apply.
they should. I went to prison for almost 3 years for bringing medical marijuana to New York. I was the East Coast Dennis Perone, right? Dana Beal. I mean, he's well known on the East Coast because we also do these smoke-ins at the White House every year. We do the pot parade in New York, and I brought pot to people for 18 years, and we had, basically, you got to understand, people with AIDS, they don't have a lot of money. They definitely don't have any money from the government to buy marijuana. And it turned out the only thing that stops that wasting disease is putting a marijuana brownie in your stomach because it's anti-inflammatory. And the reason these people had no appetite is they had chronic inflammation, like a Crohn's disease.
Let's talk
type of thing.
about that inflammation.
And they loved me because I brought pot and had pot for $3 a gram, which meant that they could afford it if on welfare, even on welfare they could afford it. So I got caught, and I was thrown in jail, and I was in jail for like 9 months, and I had a chronic heart condition. I didn't really realize. I thought it was asthma, but it was a congestive heart condition.
Right.
And they had me drinking milk every morning, and I'm lactose intolerant.
Yes.
So I got more and more sick up until the day they were taking me to the state prison. I told the judge, I says, I don't know what you're doing because all people in my family die of stroke when they're 65 and I'm 64, so there's no point in giving me the 5 years.
Right.
They was trying to choke him out with the milk.
So what happened was, I'm waiting to be transferred to prison, and I fall over dead. And I was dead for 3.5 minutes, and they had to come in and revive me with the paddles and stuff.
Yes.
See, but I was on video because I was in a holding cell. If this had happened back in my regular cell, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
So they had to take me to the hospital, and they had to put me in induced coma for 6 days. Well, that's so expensive, it almost bankrupted the county because I hadn't actually been transferred to the state of Wisconsin, right? And the county said, please sign this appeal bond. So we don't have to pay. We already paid $114,000 for the.
You have already cost the taxpayers $113,000.
And it's going to be another $82,000. It's going to be another $82,000 for the double bypass. So you're free. So you can pay for it.
Yeah. Right. Wow, man. What a story.
Anyway,
Let's release you to your debt.
Well, no, I ended up being wandering around, and they didn't know what to do. So I said, I want to get it over with. I just want to, they said to me I was going to get a year. I got 2. They lied. They always lie about everything.
Yeah.
They told me the charges will be dropped against you if you just sign this appeal bond. And then they took that back.
Yeah.
So what happened was, 8 days after I go back to the state prison this time, I have another heart attack.
Wow.
And they had to put a stent in, right? So they gave me special treatment for all of 2 months, and then they put me in the general population. And then I got shifted back and forth between different states, and I got out in 2014. And I found out that the thing I was working on, which was a Yippie museum dedicated to the marijuana movement, had been foreclosed and taken away by the real estate sharks. And that was what I was trying to raise the money for, right? So we still trying to get, we want to do a Dennis Perone museum up in San Francisco.
That'd be beautiful.
The Pottery Barn, and have a gigantic marijuana dispensary down in the middle of it.
Let's go.
And have pictures all around of Bronnie Mary and Dennis Perone. And stuff.
Let's go.
So, and we want to do that in New York too. So we want a new Yippie museum. But what I'm here for now is that we were, all during the 70s, we were trying to legalize pot. Especially when, Jimmy Carter got in and he promised he was going to legalize it. And we made a movie called Smoke In, which we had a big smoke in at the White House. High Times we had 10,000 people, and they turned themselves in, right? And nobody would take us, of course, because we turned ourselves in. So, when we were done with that, Howard Lotsoff made the movie. It's on YouTube now. You can look up Howard Lotsoff film Smoke In, right? We decided to do Howard's project.
Wow.
And see, Ed Rosenthal introduced me to Howard, right? And said they're both interested in psychedelic drugs. And after about 9 months, we were having a discussion of what is the most far out psychedelic drug you ever did. And he said, well, I took this Ibogaine, and it got me off heroin overnight.
There we go.
I woke up in the morning and I was no longer addicted to heroin. Well, see, that really resonated with me because I got on national television and was blamed for the Richard Nixon victory in 1972 because I asked McGovern about the CIA smuggling heroin in from
Into the-
Vietnam.
right,
Right. And he confirmed it. Right. He says, yes,
It was
it's really
confirmed.
happening.
Yeah.
So naturally, I was blamed for the election defeat, but I still cared about the question I asked, which is if Nixon's going to come along and take all the marijuana away through Operation Intercept,
Wow.
right? And then the streets are suddenly flooded with heroin, so the only thing you can get to get high is heroin. It's kind of like a setup.
Really?
And how can we protect these kids who already smoke pot from being exposed to some really creepy drugs like crystal meth or heroin,
right.
unless we can separate them as they do in Holland and sell, pot in the coffee shops. And as they do now here, you can't go into a dispensary in California and get heroin.
No, you can't.
No,
you
so
can't.
the people are protected against that. And what we did was we said, well, there is another way.
No dog food in this.
And the other way is we could give people, even if the government won't cooperate and legalize pot, we can give people this African rainforest substance called Ibogaine
Ibogaine.
that gets people off of heroin overnight that Howard Lotsoff originally took. And we spent all the time, because this we made a decision right after Reagan got in. And we said, well, they're not going to legalize pot. No,
Yeah.
that ain't happening.
War against drugs.
So we've got it takes about 10 years, even if you're doing the really cheap guerrilla drug development, it takes 10 years. So what happened was we got the patents, and we got patents not only for heroin, but for cocaine and methamphetamine, alcohol, and cigarettes. Ibogaine works for all of them. And then in around 1989, because of the crack epidemic, we went to the government and said, this will work for crack.
Yes.
Right? And so they said, really? And they started a program. This is the only time the government ever studied a psychedelic drug for treatment.
Right.
And they spent $5 million. And then they discontinued it because the Suboxone people were put on a panel where they were deciding whether or not Ibogaine would be allowed. And they wanted a monopoly for Suboxone.
Yes, they did.
So they naturally, every single scientist said, we want to study it. Here's our scientist. He wants to study it, right? And all the industry reps said, no, you're not going to study that. And it was rigged because they had one more vote.
Yes.
So every industry rep voted against it.
Wow.
And every scientist voted for it.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Good science.
That was under Bill Clinton. And see, the thing was, Bill Clinton had a friend from Miami named Deborah Mash, who patented a form of Ibogaine and was trying to steal the invention. And she just got it fixed so that the government would no longer pay for that research.
Wow.
And then she was supposed to do the research, and she said, "Oh, I can't find the money for the research, Howard. You're just out of luck." And then Howard got, leukemia, and he almost died from poisoned platelets, and he was all broken down. And then these NIDA scientists came along and said, "Well, you can come in with us, and we're going to have a synthetic, non-psychedelic Ibogaine called 18MC." And Howard became a sponsor of that, even though he was really in his heart of hearts for his invention of Ibogaine. And they went on for some years until Obama got in, and then we were able to get $6.2 million to study the synthetic Ibogaine. But the thing about the synthetic is, besides throwing out the psychedelic visualizations, where you learn stuff about yourself, so it's actually therapeutic, it got rid of these various nerve growth factors.
Wow.
And the nerve growth factors are what makes Ibogaine really work. So while they're trying to get people to back this stuff, and now we've got something set up in San Francisco, the San Francisco Health Department is supposed to go ahead and study the non-psychedelic Ibogaine.
Yes.
The original Lotsoff people came up with a energy supplement based on Ibogaine.
Energy supplement.
Right, and they were only putting 4 milligrams, not a gram and a half, which is what you have to do to get off heroin, but like 1/400th of that, right? In a little pill where it could not possibly be any kind of a medical problem because it's just under the level that triggers any kind of negative reaction.
Well, low dose is a stimulant.
Well, yeah, but that's the energy supplement.
Yes.
Right. The idea
That's
was,
energy.
that was used.
So-
it was used by the French for climbing mountains. It was legal in France as lambarine from 1939 to 1967, right? And they basically used it as an energy supplement, and also for some neurasthenias and stuff. So anyway, they banned it because it was too good, and they were afraid it could be used for doping in sport, and that nobody could tell that you were on a stimulant because they had no test for it. So that was the actual reason it was pulled off the market. But I found out from studying the GDNF while I was in jail. I got to read the same pharmacology book 4 times, so I really know this stuff now. I found out this stuff had been used for Parkinson's. Actually, what it was they weren't using the Ibogaine. They were using the direct nerve growth factor, which is called GDNF, and they were injecting it into the base of the brain because there's no way it can get through the blood-brain barrier. And we said, well, wait a minute, Ibogaine gets through the blood-brain barrier. Maybe since it's expressing a lot of GDNF, it'll have an effect on the Parkinson's. So all we did, Paul Krasner got a guy from Ken Kesey on the electric Kool-Aid acid test, Ken Kesey, a guy named Dean Quarstrom, to go down to Mexico and take this for 28 days, just 2 pills of 4 milligrams each, way too little to have any effect on the heart whatsoever. And lo and behold, after a month, he could button his shirt again. He could use a knife and a fork and cut his own food. And he could use a pen and sign his name. And when I went to see him, because he kept taking it and getting better and better until he got it back, the first month he got back about 30%. After 2 months, he got back 70%. He kind of plateaued out at 70%. And he has to keep taking Ibogaine every day, right? Because the Parkinson's disease is still in there. But when I went to see him, he drove me to the restaurant in his car. So I'm saying.
So it took Parkinson's and it put it under control.
Took
the brakes off it a bit.
You know, the very funny thing is Deborah Mash at the University of Miami. You remember Bill Clinton's friend? She was supposed to be looking for a cure for Parkinson's, and she had it right in front of her all along. But she wasn't sincere, and we were sincere. We just want to save the world, and you know.
There's a lot of that going on where the cures are right in front of us, and we're.
So she didn't need
dodging
no
around trying to get there. So why don't we talk about what this Ibogaine? It's what would be called a broad spectrum compound. Has a lot of uses. Sounds very similar to what we're doing with cannabis and CBD and the ratios.
And it's a plant.
Tell us about what are we supposed to be using for it? I mean, we've got an opioid epidemic here. We've got people that are dying and addicted. Let's start there. What can be done for Ibogaine there?
Yale and Johns Hopkins that shows that 41% of people who took it after a single treatment episode or a short course of treatments walked away from opiates for the rest of their life.
See,
so it's almost half.
This is the kind of stuff.
And then, there's also, it has a lot of other effects. It has anti-tumor effects. It's related to vincristine, which is an anti-cancer chemotherapy. It's got anti-parasite effects. They're using it for river blindness, which is caused by a little, like a tsetse fly or something with a parasite that attacks your eyes. It's being used for hepatitis C. It turned out to work really well for hepatitis C, much better than the stuff they had at the time, which was ribavirin, interferon. Except that then Big Pharma came out with Harvoni, which is, you remember that pill for $1,000 a pill, where you're supposed to pay like $100,000 to cure your cure your hepatitis C. That actually does work better than Ibogaine for that. But Ibogaine's still there. Ibogaine works against drug-resistant tuberculosis, for which there is nothing.
Wow.
It works for a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff that we can't really develop drugs for because it's extremely expensive to develop some of these drugs just to get them through the R&D pipeline.
Right.
So we now have a natural plant-based substance called Ibogaine, and we are making progress in this country with regards to plant-based medicines and moving things forward. But I really want to, let's dial in, I'd like to dial in real quick with what goes on that allows Ibogaine to cause a person to not need, to be not addicted. How does that, what's going on here? And is it something that we should be adding to the list? And the second question to that is that should we be adding this to the list? So as we get through CBD in the fall, when Congress decides to reschedule or do something with CBD, or Congress is really telling the FDA, you guys got to get your acts together and do it quickly because we have some problems here.
Yeah.
Would Ibogaine be one of these things that we should be moving out of scheduling as well?
Actually, they
because
are
these problems.
complementary in Parkinson's disease. A lot of Parkinson's patients, for the tremor, take CBD, and it controls the tremor. But you need to add Ibogaine to attack the paralysis, because there's a paralysis problem also. So I think they go hand in hand, you know. But to answer your first question, second,
Sorry.
there's a combination of effects. There's a ketamine-like effect called N-methyl-D-aspartate, which downregulates withdrawal and supersensitization. That's supersensitization is the reason you can't stop snorting coke when you start. Right? Some people. Then there's also an like a smoking cessation effect. There's a thing called alpha-3 beta-4 nicotinic acetylcholine blocking, and it blocks like a cigarette effect.
Damps it down.
And it's specific to the base of the brain. See, Wellbutrin, which does the same thing, kind of, is working all through the body. So it's not that effective for meth. They tried it and it doesn't work. So there's also, besides those effects, there's a serotonin effect, so that people are pretty depressed after they quit drugs. But there's this long-acting, it's like Prozac on steroids. So you have a great mood because you have high serotonin levels for months. And then finally, and this is really important, there's a kappa opiate, which is like salvia. There's a salvia-like effect that downregulates tolerance, just gets rid of tolerance so that you can resprout your receptors. And then there's a couple of nerve growth factors that actually do the work of resprouting the receptors. GDNF, glial-derived neurotrophic factor, NGF, nerve growth factor, and BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And we just found out about these additional stuff, but GDNF's been known for a while. And that, of course, was the thing that led me to recommend to Bob Cisco that you do this experiment so that I can claim to be among the 3 people who discovered the cure for Parkinson's disease.
The big cure. Well, these are diseases that we don't have we don't have really good drugs for. Some of the drugs are pretty decent, but we're going in the direction where I think we're all starting to think that some of these plant-derived compounds seem to be very effective at dealing with these ridiculously difficult diseases.
People develop tolerance, right, to the L-dopa that's replacing dopamine, so that it only works for about like 6 months, and then
and then it wears off.
It wears off,
Yeah.
and that like kappa opiate effect, that salvia, that deals with that. See, so basically what you're doing is you're putting through a combination of short-acting effects, putting the brain in a very, very plastic, malleable state, and then pumping in a bunch of growth factors so that the new steady state actually establishes itself. And
there's a little bit of rewiring going on.
Yeah,
there's some rewiring that's going on, and Ibogaine is helping the rewiring that needs to take place for the brain to go back to normal.
Right.
Is that basically what we're talking about here? When you have an addicted person?
See, what happens when you develop an addiction is you can't feel your own dopamine anymore. Because you went and you like you hit the brain with a huge amount of crystal meth, and it was like a flash, and you ended up like blinding the receptor, and the receptor can't see. You know, it's like the flash bulb went off, and the receptor can't detect the dopamine that's there. So that's why they then have to put, something like Cinnamate in the mix, which then only like kind of compounds the problem because you still don't have enough receptors to feel it. And Ibogaine resprouts the receptors, which nothing is supposed to do, but it does.
Now, I have a question. So Ibogaine, if it has an effect to reduce addiction craving and all those chemical processes as well as the behavioral thing, does it relieve pain? Is it a pain?
There is a form of Ibogaine invented in India that is a non-opiate pain killer. And this is a matter of like chasing down the research. Because I read about it, and I don't think they...
Because the only reason we have an opioid epidemic, for better or worse, is because we have there's a lot of pain, and we ended up just saying, here, take this, take this, take this. We've done it, and we did it to the point where we're now in a lot of trouble here. So at the same time, these presents opportunities.
They wouldn't use medical marijuana. Much pain can be addressed with medical marijuana. You don't have to go to opiates. Opiates should be a last resort. Because they're dangerous.
The next level.
You can have like respiratory collapse,
That's what we're dealing with. 60,000 people die a year. We really have some serious problems here. So I think this is one of the reasons we're having you here, and we're both in the same, talking at the same table and whatnot. Is like I'm a pharmacologist, I'm a cancer biologist, and I'm now studying pain because the drugs that I was developing that ended up being cannabinoid receptor agonists ended up being used for cancer, and you said that they were anti-tumor as well. The Ibogaine was anti-tumor as well, and it seems as though we're ready for a new generation of these plant-derived compounds to start entering into our society to not only deal with the problems that have been created by our drug. We got drug problems, and we got to start picking out the drugs that are part of the solution versus the drugs that are killing us.
You know what Trump's expert said? This woman named Bertha Madras from Harvard. She's unique. She was both in the room with Jeff Sessions when they had Kevin Sabet there, and they decided they're going to restart the war on marijuana.
Yes, they just did. Yeah.
And she was also on the president's opiate commission.
Wow.
So she said, what people shouldn't be desperate for is a quick fix. We have wonderful treatments in this. Yes,
shut it down, basically. Shut it down.
Shut it down.
Well, no, I just want to ask you, have you ever known a heroin or opiate user who wasn't desperate when they woke up in the morning and the very first thing they wanted to do was like
slam something.
Yeah. Right?
Fast.
Yeah. So that's against human nature. She's saying, oh, you got to stop having your addict nature before you be eligible for the treatment.
Right. Right. You can't have the problem in order to be eligible for the treatment.
Yeah. Doc, tell me, you know what path they're going on, and I'm pretty sure you're deeply into this as a PhD. What are some of the ideas that you think that we could actually touch on with this Ibogaine?
I think when you look at what are our problems?
Yes.
The big C, cancer.
Okay.
That's a tremendous amount of resources, a tremendous amount of attention. If anything, and every single oncologist and everybody in the medical community knows that when you're dealing with cancer, there's no silver bullet. You're trying every single thing in the toolkit, no stone unturned.
Yes.
So anything that has the molecular basis of that kills a cancer cell, we need to be looking into it. We need to be researching it.
Yes.
We need to be taking our tax dollars and putting it into new forms of research. And as a pharmacologist, so I was specialized in drug development, and I was supposed to go to be working for a big pharma to develop the new drugs that are solving all the problems. Well, that's when you kill cancer, you find something that works. You don't care whether it's plant-based. And most of our drugs come from plant-based. We just tweak a molecule on it, and then it becomes the next big blockbuster.
It all comes from plants.
And yeah, everything comes from plants. We look at nature, we find the thing that works, we tweak it, we put it in the lab, we synthesize it, grow it up, and then build a gazillion-dollar market for it. But for instance, when you're moving on to the fact that yes, we have to be really looking into these plant-based compounds to be treating our diseases. No doubt about it. Get used to it. That's how it's going to be. It's medically and scientifically the way to go, and everybody's ready. So and then the question of like why is we're having this conversation about this Ibogaine being anti-cancer and that the CBD and THC might be anti-cancer or anti-cancer. And look at, it's the same drug is being used for pain. And pain's the big deal. Like pain is the biggest thing. The biggest deal. It's the thing that runs everybody to the doctor. Yeah. You go to the doctor when you feel like shit. I'm hurt. Let's face it. Like I'm hurt, and then I go to the doctor.
My heart's pumping. Yeah, it's supposed to.
And here we have these plant-based remedies that are out there being used, and that's the scientific and the medical community is just like, well, we'd like to really be a part of that, and so that's really going back to your thing is that it seems as though the biggest challenges that we have, and neurodegenerative diseases. Neurodegenerative disease is miserable. I had my father went through a non-Parkinsonian, undiagnosable disease, and it was a neurodegenerative disease. We didn't. The treatment still doesn't. They put him on L-Dopa.
Right.
And he died from it.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
That's not cool. I'm not cool with.
It worked.
And I'm not cool with an entire system that says you should only be doing it through this specific way to solve the problem.
Absolutely.
And everyone that I know that's in pharma, they are all saying, we're not necessarily happy pushing these drugs either. They're like, they know they want to be a part of it. So it's just I think that some of the folks in the political community are the ones that are really the problem now, because the medical communities if you're an addiction specialist, you don't have a lot of tools in the toolkit. If you're in cancer, you only have a certain amount of tools in the toolkit. If you're in pain management, you have very limited tools in the toolkit, and these plant-based compounds seem to be complementing and are acting with the drugs that we have to exert a really good effect. And we're starting to see that with the fact that as cannabis sales go up, opioids prescriptions go down, and we monitor that as an after effect when the democratization of medicine has come. People are self-medicating. And we need to have the healthcare community involved, and we need to have the medical community involved. We need to have the scientific community involved. And we also need like the senior scholars here, like Dana, who has said, here, this is something we've known for 20, 30 years. The water's warm, come on in, to go after some of these diseases. And I don't know if I answered that question or went on a soapbox or what, but
made sense. That's all that matters to me. Whether you feel like you said it right or wrong, it made sense to me.
So representing the scientific and medical community, I think we're all now, there. And now's the time for Ibogaine to be brought up and put front and center, just like we brought CBD front and center, and we're going to get to THC in front and center, and we're going to get over this whole concept of that the drugs that we take at the end of a hard work day, and they're looked at as being adult use, but if you've worked hard and you've had a stressful day, you're taking something. You're either going to the bar and having a beer, or you're drinking your wine, or you're smoking a little bit of cannabis, or it probably in 10 years, we're probably going to be, moving into things like Ibogaine and these other things that were so underground, and now they have to be brought up and be brought as being a part of the future of medicine and healthcare.
I love it.
And so do I. I'm a pharmacologist. So I'm a kid in a candy store now, because it's like, I finally have some drugs that are really like at a low cost that aren't gonna bankrupt anybody. Yeah. And we're all getting on the same page. We're all starting to get on the same page, and I think that's going to be great for us.
Exactly.
Whether it's adult use or for medical use, a lot of these things is like, you know, if you have a great plant-based compound that is something that you enjoy, and it also treats difficult to treat diseases.
Yeah.
Well, you know, let's all
go.
chill out and relax and have a good time here.
Exactly.
You know, let's.
I would say you got to be clear that actually in higher doses, Ibogaine is not that much fun to do. You have to end up like sitting still because you get car sick if you try to move, and it's way better than going through heroin withdrawal.
Oh, yeah, side
But
effects.
it's not something you would want to do twice. Have you ever?
We've seen the same.
Who here has done a dab overdose?
I've never dabbed. Don't want to dab.
Listen.
Oh, okay. She says she did a dab overdose.
No,
and
no,
basically, what you do is you can't move, and if you try to move,
Can't breathe.
no, if you try to move, you have a tendency to get car sick, which is exactly like Ibogaine.
Well, this is the great thing
I
about
seen
these
a
drugs.
guy
is that
have a dab overdose. Not to cut you off. I seen a guy have a dab overdose.
Did he collapse?
Listen, what he just said. He collapsed too. Listen, I was right behind him. He was getting what he got. They set him up. You know, some dispensaries they hit you with the, you want a free dab? And I can see the look on his face. He didn't know what they were talking about.
Right.
But he did it
He
anyway.
did it anyway.
And he held it.
Listen,
See?
biggest mistake he
not
can
hold
ever,
it.
biggest mistake he ever made. He hit it as if he was hitting flour, and
Right.
you can't even. Some people can't even hold flour that long. He hit it and he held it,
Wow.
and that was the last thing he saw. He fell
just
back.
fell over, man.
Listen, no, he didn't fall over. He fell back, straight back. It was like Tim Burr. He went back, and his head. It was tile floor in there. That's all you
Cracked
heard. I ran out of the dispensary down the street
Yeah.
to the fish market.
Get out of
Listen,
here.
I went back in there to go. He was just now getting up. He had a big knot on his head the size of a cartoon.
Wow.
I was like, yeah.
But these are self-correcting. This is what if you take too much, you don't want to touch it again.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the kind of drugs that we
That's
really
what
should
happened
have
to
to be
me.
like, I don't want any part
No,
of that.
that's on a whole nother level, though.
that
That's,
happened
What I'm trying to say
that's
is
times
there
5.
is actually, on a physiological level, this connection between Iboga and cannabis.
Iboga. I like
Iboga.
that. Look, this can go on for hours, and I definitely want to bring you guys back.
Yeah, well, he just tapped on this connection between Iboga and
That's what I'm
cannabis. We haven't even gotten into it yet.
I know, but golly, we got so much going on.
Busy day.
It's I want to give it up to Dr.
Everybody, this
Dana
movie is
Beal.
coming on is going to be on film. Very informative film right here.
In closing,
Man.
Doctor, can you give us some game in closing?
Some game.
Let's play.
God, wow, you just set me up. I'm as a medical pharmacologist and as a drug developer and a cancer guy and a guy that neuroscientist that goes after the toughest diseases. I think we have a lot of tools that are going to come into our toolkits to go help with a lot of our problems, and I think hopefully we're going to get over this opioid epidemic. I mean, we have to have faith. We have to think that we have some new, that cannabis, Ibogaine, these are new tools in the toolkit.
New tools.
Everybody's going to get up, eventually the politicians are going to get up to speed with
Yes.
this. The patients are already there, the doctors are already there, the scientists are ready to go. This whole concept of that, yes, there's certain ways to research things. We're researching it. The federal government released the first grants just this year on using minor cannabinoids and terpenes as a way to go as a non-psychoactive pain relief. We don't have that. We never did that. We stopped for all your entire career. You've been stuck with this phenomenon where the feds were not online, and the feds are getting lined up. The feds are getting ready, and they're going to be with us. And I think for all the social, we have to get over these injustices that have plagued our society.
Yes.
We have to introduce or reintroduce these remarkable botanical drugs on if it's medical or plant-based compound, whatever you want to call them. Everybody has their own term for them, But from a medical perspective, just looking at in terms of specifically just the healthcare benefits, we're going to find a lot of these problems are going to start to be resolved. And I think there's going to be a lot less, I think doctors are going to be a lot more comfortable in the future, and the scientists are definitely going to be on board. And, folks like Dana here really we all learned. I was in college and I read the Emperor's, Emperor's New,
right.
I was like, oh my God,
Right.
what? There's a conspiracy?
Yeah.
And we're slowly getting beyond that, and I think honesty and transparency is going to rule out. And I have faith as somebody who's been trying to go after deadly diseases,
Yes.
and I'm finally like, wow, we might be able to go after some of this stuff. Like my dad with the Parkinson's. I mean, Jesus, what if he was alive today, we would have something.
Wow.
So we're getting there. And this whole pain thing. I mean, we live in a stressful society. We live in a pain-driven. There's a lot of pain. Anyone who does physical labor for a living is in pain.
Is it true that pain is inflammation?
Okay, yeah. There's a
Inflammation drives pain.
Inflammation drives pain.
Yeah, because I'm, military veteran, go to the doctor for back, knee pain, and I did everything across the board. They gave me all the drugs, and I don't like being like this, so I told them to take me off of that. So they gave me some naproxen, which was a non-addictive, non-filling thing. That didn't really work, so they gave me some ibuprofen.
Which you can only take so much because it's eventually going to go to your liver, and it's going to have some problems.
Is that right?
I got a shotgun for the knee.
Well, the VA, the veterans are fighting mad. The veterans are fighting mad to get their medical cannabis.
We're fighting hard.
You're the fighters. So keep fighting. The relationship between inflammation and pain is that inflammation basically jacks up the neurons. And so you have this, and what interesting thing that happens is that when you have inflammation, your blood system basically creates molecules called cytokines that are the chemical embodiment of the pain, and they go through the blood, and the cytokines get released. The blood cells release these specific cytokines in response to pain that produces an inflammation. Then when it gets to, when those little molecules, while they're jacking up the neuron in your knee or whatever, then it gets up into your spinal cord, and those molecules tell the neurons in your spinal cord you have pain. So that's where the inflammation, pain, it has to be, and there's an inflammation response that eventually tells the brain that you have pain, and that's a fascinating area because now pain and inflammation. And what are we looking at with our cannabinoids and our CBD is that it reduces inflammation, and therefore it has some effect on pain.
What
but then it
causes
also has an
inflammation?
effect on pain itself.
Glutamate.
Glutamate, yeah.
And actually, what it is glutamate is inflammatory. It's in the PowerPoint I wasn't able to show all the way of, but
my guy loves his PowerPoint.
I love it.
He loves his PowerPoints, man.
But
This is a
back
yippie
signals,
that does PowerPoints now.
It back signals from the receptor to the terminal saying it's too hot in here.
Okay.
Literally, the effect of cannabis is to chill you out.
Okay.
That's what it does.
You know what? We're going to wrap up this segment.
You see me, I'm chill.
I definitely want to bring the doctor back and get you guys on another show.
We need more people like them.
I love this.
They
This is
dosed me up today.
Longest show,
Shit.
longest podcast since we've been podcasting.
Yeah, no, this one going down in history.
But I'm getting signals that we have to wrap it up. So
They
what I wanna
dosed
do
me
is,
up with this info today. I'll tell you that
We're going to
I
geeked
want
out.
to thank
Y'all
our
loaded me
guests,
up.
Dana Beal and Dr. Michael Madison, PhD. Let's give it up, man. And I definitely want to
Oh, yeah.
invite you guys back.
And shout out to the yippies, hippies, and all that.
Yippee.
Yes. Yeah, the hippies are back, man. The hippies are here, and they're in the room.
Thank you again. I really appreciate you. Another segment of Knuckle TV.
Most
Thank you.
definitely.
Appreciate it. Oh, that was good.